Deborah, tell me about your progress report today. What are your main concerns that things that haven't been acted on?
Well, it's a mixed report card. I mean, some things have been done and have been done well. What we haven't seen, though, is the legislative change program that was a major recommendation from last year's report. So, I mean, just to recount that, we're talking about the establishment of a cross-party parliamentary committee, which would essentially set the standards, set the framework for ethical behaviour in Parliament, and a parliamentary integrity commissioner who would have an independent person who would be able to actually investigate misconduct by MPs and indeed sanction bad behaviour.
How vital is it that we have those couple of positions in terms of public confidence in transparency, accountability in our state parliament?
I think it's absolutely vital, and we've seen time and time again examples of misconduct being called out in my Red Shirts report, misuse of public funds, in last year's report, misuse of public funds and other matters. We continue to see some pretty egregious breaches of standards that fall short of the criminal. And one of the things that both IBAC and I have said, and said repeatedly, is that there is no framework in place for dealing with this kind of grey corruption, the ones that fall short of criminal misconduct. And Parliament needs that to allow the public to have confidence in our elected officials.
Given that your report is now a year old and we still don't have certainty on those couple of roles coming necessarily, does that concern you, frustrate you?
Okay, I'd love to discover that this is about to happen. That would be that's what we want to know. I mean, it was heartening that the Premier, on the day the report was tabled, accepted the recommendations and said that they would be implemented, but there does seem to be a little bit of a mismatch between the very eager enthusiasm to accept the recommendations and the detail that has followed.
The Premier has today indicated that there is a substantial update to come soon, that Cabinet has been working on it. To say they have not been working on it would be, no, I can't actually quite remember what he said, but they are working on it, trust us, and there's a substantial update to come to your timelines. Is that good news?
Look, I'm delighted to hear it if that's the case. There's 15 sitting days left in this Parliament.
Is that not enough time for legislation to get all the way through?
Well, it's possible, but what was said last year was that there needs to be a significant consultation process with across parties, with IBAC and the Ombudsman, and the timeline that we proposed in last year's report anticipated that those policy positions would be finalised around about June, legislation would be passed by the end of this year, and it would be fully implemented by June of next year.
Because does that consultation need to happen before the legislation?
That's what I would have expected. But, I'm happy to be pleasantly surprised.
How much consultation has there been?
None as far as I'm aware.
I was going to expand on that, if we want to swap spots. Yeah. On the consultation, just what, if any, engagement with the Department of Premier and Cabinet has your office had since the first report?
We've had meetings with Parliamentary Services and with Premier and Cabinet to receive updates in relation to this, and in some areas, they have described measures of progress, which I'm pleased to see. It's the major reforms that, for me, are lacking in detail, and we haven't seen what they're going to look like, what that consultation is going to be, what the timetable is going to be, and that's what I would like to see.
It's fairly rare for the IBAC and your office to come together on an investigation, let alone put out a first report, let alone put out a progress report. What specifically prompted both you and the IBAC to work on this progress report and encourage the government even more?
Well, the progress report is quite a natural event following a major report. It's something that I do on my investigations and they would do on theirs. This is the first time there's ever been a joint investigation by an anti-corruption agency and an ombudsman. But it wouldn't be a surprising or unusual scenario that we're following up on our recommendations and going, look, how's it tracking? And that includes celebrating progress, and there has been progress just not quite enough detail in some areas to convince me, at least, that they're going to happen in the time frame that we've proposed.
When you look at timelines, and I know our media colleagues asked you this morning, but keen to ask you on camera, your term expires at a certain time next year.
End of March.
Yes. Do you expect progress by then?
If they are going to meet the time frame we proposed last year, then we would expect to see legislation passed before the end of this year. And as I say, there are 15 sitting days left in Parliament, and I'm not aware, I'd love to be surprised, but I'm not aware that there's a draft bill.
Present any concerns, red flags at your end?
Well, I don't want to judge this before it's happened. I mean, at this stage, we're dealing with a scenario where we simply don't have the detail. Without seeing the detail, I really can't comment. I mean, I hope that it meets all of the objectives we set out in last year's report.
How crucial is it that integrity agencies are involved in the putting together, being consulted?
I think it's absolutely crucial. I mean, you know, the amount of work we did in putting together the report into Operation Watts last year, the work that my office did in dealing with the Red Shirts matter before that. And we said last year that the case for reform was both compelling and urgent.